Public meeting at the City of Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board is now called to order at 4:28 p.m. on Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. Some of the board members are present here at City Hall, along with members of the public. With the assistance of the Communications Department and the Information Technology Department, this meeting is live streamed on the Ethics Board's website, and we are recording it for future reference. There is a delay with online communications, and we should all be patient. As always, we thank these members of the City of Tallahassee for their support. For those attending the meeting online, please make sure that your microphone is muted. We ask the public to email ethics@talgov.com if they wish to speak online on agenda or non-agenda items. Those who have submitted their names will be allowed to speak as scheduled. While the meeting is in progress, please do not speak during the board's discussion. We have set aside 2 places on the agenda for the public to speak. For those who wish to make a public comment, please complete a speaker request form and forward it to the administrative specialist, Ms. Oscar Leverson Green. Be sure to state what you wish to speak about on the form. Public speakers will be given up to 3 minutes in accordance with the board's bylaws. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to
the republic
which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Kirsten Costa,
Here.
Patrick Kelly,
Here.
Carlos Ray, Reba Calhoun, Adam Commissar, Brian Smith. Madam Chair, the physical presence of 4 or more board members is required to have a quorum. Since we have fewer than more board members, this does not prohibit members online from participating, but we cannot stage a vote.
Thank you very much. Now,
Skip.
so we can, do you have any questions about the minutes? No. Okay, so we'll skip that for right now. Is there any public comment on agenda items?
No.
And we will start with the Ethics Office report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We completed a campaign contribution refund program, promotions program, which we'll talk about at our next meeting as we do an analysis. We drafted an update to an online course for newly elected officials, which right now Ms. Porter will have to take, and whoever wins in the next election will have to take. They have to take it every time they win. We update the ethics guide, which we will discuss today, and follow the directives from the last meeting. We responded to ethics complaints, maintained administrative duties, and held staff meetings with the board of care. As what you see listed there are the purchases that were made in the month of August. And they should correlate with the budget report. You see in the budget report that we have a balance of $100,000 at the end of August, and we still project somewhere around a balance of about 71,000 at the end of the fiscal year. Any questions about the budget? With issue tracking, we didn't have any ethics complaints, so we have nothing to report on that. We had a number of referrals, and you see those on page 6D. I won't go through all of those, but those were made available to you. No action is required on these, since they're just referrals. Any questions about anything in the report?
So next, the general update.
General update, got to write it down. We're still haven't heard from FSU. Madam Chair, I suggested you draft a letter to them, reminding them of their responsibilities. It's been at least a year and a half. And this is one of the reasons why we need to have that position filled. Not on this agenda. Like I said, I am working on an online course, so we are an online course for newly elected officials. The chair and John and Tasker's real name is Leverson, not Leverson. She didn't tell me for more than a year. I just happened to hear somebody pronounce it correctly, but it's Tasker Leverson Green. And that's the way they pronounce it in Quincy. So we're going to call her Leverson. But the three of them reviewed and gave me feedback. I sent it to a voiceover person, the same one that originally did the course, just to take care of the changes. Cost me about $600 some and not a lot of time. And I've already gotten that back. So we'll be finalizing that and getting it to newly elected officials, Ms. Porter, and then whoever gets elected in November will have to take this course. So we're finishing that. And those are the only general updates.
Okay, next we have proposed revision to the ethics code. A, solicitation and acceptance of gifts, and B, doing business with the city. If you remember last month, we directed the staff to revise their draft proposals. So today's update follows up on this draft.
Yes, so under this tab, you should have two draft ordinances, 24-ORD-02D and then a 02E. The 02D keeps the definition of de minimis that we discussed last month at the values of $20 per gift, not to exceed $50 per year from a single source. It then adds language, this is 02D. Then it also requires a reporting process for those gifts, since they would not be reported at the state level because they're too low. And then we also provide an exception for what we discussed, like the media appearances, television, radio, internet, or print advertising. And the criteria for those was the primary purpose would be to serve a public interest. Primary beneficiary would be someone other than a covered individual. And then we had to put language in here, fair market value does not exceed $100. And the reason for that is that even if we were to create this exception within our code, we're still going to be bound to the state cap of $100. And I know we went back and forth and said, okay, do we want to, we had talked earlier about how there was something in the state we didn't have at the local level, and it was confusing because of the lack of consistency. And I think we have the potential to create more confusion, because we could say, oh yeah, go ahead and do it at the local level. And then next thing you know, they have a state complaint and they wonder why they're getting a state complaint when we told them it was okay. So that's the issue of the media language. So O2D includes that media language plus the definition of de minimis and the reporting. O2E does the media exception only, no de minimis for value. So we can't vote on it today. My recommendation is likely just to leave it all alone. I think the dollar amount figure was not our primary intention for doing this. We were just trying to find a way to get media coverage included. If you recall, this came about because of an advisory opinion where the mayor was invited to participate in a scavenger hunt through a radio station, which seemed to be a good cause and everybody seemed to think should be permissible, but unfortunately it's not. And we were trying to find a way that it would be permissible, and it just doesn't appear that there is any way we could get that done. So, so that being said, my recommendation would be just to pass on both of these recommendations and put our focus elsewhere. So we can't vote today anyway, so I guess I'm moving in the right direction. So,
And
I planned it out this way. So.
And if you read the summary, explain our reasoning. Unless the state changes their standards, there's really nothing that we're going to do that could really allow it. So it would be fruitless and not practical to take it to the city commission knowing that. So
How do you calculate? I know we can't do anything about it. Can we discuss it at least? Okay.
Yes.
How would you calculate like $100 for a media appearance? That you're probably going to exceed that pretty quickly if you show up on TV.
Mhm.
So it kind of defeats the whole purpose, right? Okay. I know there's been, I'm trying to think of, an ethics opinion regarding, the governor making a welcome announcement on the airport kind of thing. And they made an exception in that instance, I think.
No, they said he could not.
He could not make an appearance, but then I think the Attorney General could make an appearance on some commercial regarding the rights of women, or I think protecting women, violence against women.
Yes, in that case, the group that was going to pay for the advertisement was not a lobbyist or a vendor, whereas the COVID warnings.
Not the COVID. This is another one. It's like a welcoming to the airport. Not the COVID warning one.
That's the mayor right now. It's just their,
Yeah, no, but there's an ethics opinion regarding, I think the governor had there's an ethics opinion where the governor had to go welcome.
I think it appeared on the buses as well as you were, I think they,
I'll look at
I
that one.
can't recall that, but
But the one with the Attorney General's office, that one he appeared in the announcements and didn't see an issue in that one. To see why.
which one was that?
This is the Attorney General. He appeared in some announcements regarding a conference regarding women's violence against women or things of that nature. And they found,
This is the Council for the Status
Yes.
of Women and
Yes.
Girls or something like that? Yeah, and that was the organization that paid for the communication and they were not one of the prohibited donors. And
Okay.
that's why that wasn't a violation. That's why
Wasn't a
that was
violation.
permitted.
and it didn't look at dollar amount in that instance.
Yeah, they didn't have to. Because it wasn't prohibited.
So then why would the dollar, so let's say in this instance, if he were to appear in a similar announcement, would he be restricted from appearing in such a,
Only if the person paying for the communication was a vendor, a lessee of property, or a lobbyist.
and then the dollar amount was on issue, so why are we making a dollar amount in this instance?
Trying to find a way to make it work.
Gotcha, no, that's what I'm trying to make,
Yeah.
because at state level, there are instances where they allow state officials to appear and these things that would be of value and these advertisings and
Yes, but they can't do it if they
they're
are one
paid
of
for.
those groups.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
the prohibited groups.
So for instance, I think one of the phone companies, Bell South, I guess, back in the day,
Yeah.
tried to do a public service
And
announcement. They couldn't
they
do
couldn't
it.
do it, yeah.
The COVID announcements, they couldn't do.
No.
And the Commission on Ethics even came out and said, while we applaud these efforts
You
and
can't.
want to support this, we can't.
Prohibited source.
But then the Council on Women and Girls, they said was permissible because they weren't a prohibited source. So in this case,
So if it's not prohibited source. well,
yeah, then there would be no problem. They could do the scavenger hunt. The problem in this case was the radio station was a vendor.
Vendor. So regardless, they couldn't do it anyways. Regardless of the dollar amount.
Unless we could find a way to.
No, yeah, so,
Under 100, but which would be hard. And then the other downside of that is you don't want to just say it's 100 when it's not really 100.
Yeah.
We've done that before in Tallahassee and it didn't end well.
No.
So we want to definitely make sure we.
so I think it's gotta be, it seems it can appear, but the restriction is it can't be cannot be paid by a prohibited source or vendor. In that instance, the dollar amount won't be a factor, would it?
And in that case, we don't need an ordinance. It's already permitted.
So then it just basically, do we,
That's why my recommendation was just to leave it alone.
okay.
Just don't make a change. Because in those cases, they'll be able to do it.
And the de minimis issue, I know that de minimis always comes up. You always get the example, linemen working after a hurricane recovery and somebody wants to give a bottle of water and they freak out about that.
They would likely not be a covered individual.
Okay. So this de minimis wouldn't be a factor either. That's the example I always give, they're always like afraid of
Yeah, I know.
giving a bottle of water, but they're not covered individuals.
Yeah.
You would likely dismiss that bottom order.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just clarifying. So you're saying not to do anything, not because we can't vote on it, but basically leave it alone. And-
I just think our primary for doing this, we can't get there, so
Okay,
we tried.
sounds good.
any other questions on that one? Okay. Next is proposed revisions to the administrative procedures
Yes, so this is the doing business with and conflicting contractual relationship language. This is largely modeled on section 112.313 subsections, I believe it's 3 and 7, as well as the exceptions in subsection 12.
But
Yes.
I went out of order. We skipped the 8B, which was doing business with the city. I jumped
That's
ahead.
what- that's what I was doing.
Oh, you were doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yes, it's doing business with, but it's also conflicting contractual relationships. And then there's exceptions. So those are largely in line with state law. I think it was brought up last time that there's a reference to material interest in the language that comes from statute, but that's not in our definition. So we added a new section 1 to this proposed ordinance that provides a definition of material interest. It's largely in line with state law, which is 5% ownership in a company, direct or indirect, but not to include a spouse or minor child, which is what state law provides for. And then the rest, section 2 is unchanged from last month.
Any questions on that?
Do we have, I'm just trying to see, I know there's been instances, at least in ethics opinions, where elected official, there's an existing contract and the elected official gets elected to office. They won't have to, they wouldn't have to cancel a contract because now he's elected official with that business, is he? Would they? So there's an existing contract with the firm and a person from that firm gets elected to a city commission.
Is it retroactive?
I think they-
Would that be a conflict of interest in the sense that they would not be able to?
Well, as far as the conflict of interest issue, they would not have taken any action to approve it, so
Yeah.
they wouldn't have a 112.3148 problem, but as far as the doing business with, I think they likely would if they didn't divest from the business, because it'd still be doing business with.
Okay, I thought there was an exception for that, okay.
All right, so next is proposed revisions to the administrative procedures of the complaint against the staff and board. At the last meeting, the board was presented several options with the pros and cons. We accepted the recommendations to handle complaints against the board or staff in-house and asked the staff to draft administrative procedures for our approval.
So the options presented last month, we decided to move forward with the one where we would handle those types of complaints internally and just send it out to an independent investigator and an independent attorney. So with the administrative procedures, I tried to just weave it into what already existed instead of just scrapping the whole thing and starting over. So it feels a little awkward at times, but it gets us there. So in Rule 1.03, we provide for legal sufficiency. And right now, it's just one size fits all. How do we handle these issues? Now, if the issue were to come to the ethics office and it involved a member of this board or Miss Lieberson Green, then it would go to the ethics officer to determine legal sufficiency, and then he would send it out to an investigator. If a complaint were to come in for the ethics officer, it would then come to the board counsel to determine legal sufficiency, and then it would go out to an independent investigator. So the legal sufficiency stays the same. We still have the same standard for finding legal sufficiency, but we now create these three groups. There's everybody else, there's the board and Ms. Tasker, and then there's Mr. Dwight. So those are the three standards dealing with the legal sufficiency. And then that all stays in this subsection B of Rule 1.03. We then move down to documents provided to the respondent. We add the board counsel to be the one responsible for sending that out, and that's to take into account cases where it's the complaints against the ethics officer. The preliminary investigation and probable cause, we then create this 3-scenario pathway that we have that everybody else, the board, Ms. Leverson Green, and then the ethics officer, and how those are handled. In the cases of the board and anybody on the staff, it does say that the shall promptly refer to the independent investigator, so it must be referred out. It's not discretionary like it would be in all other cases. The independent investigator would do the finding of fact. The ethics officer or the board counsel, when the complaints against the ethics officer, would also be required to hire an independent attorney to serve as an advocate, which is a position defined under our bylaws, who would essentially kind of serve as a prosecuting attorney. And they would likely prepare a legal brief to be presented to the board during a closed session. The board will still serve as the probable cause panel. And the independent investigator and the outside attorney or the advocate would solely be responsible for presenting the issue to the board. The ethics officer and the board counsel would have no role in that process. I think that's it.
Are there any questions on it? Thank you for all your work on that. I'm sorry we can't vote on it today.
Fine.
Next will be the ethics guide. In the administrative procedures, the staff's directed to publish an ethics guide for Tallahassee residents. Over time, the guide has been a source for residents, employees, complainants, and respondents of ethics complaints. Today, the staff is going to present an updated version for our review.
Yes, and this, thank you, Madam Chair, this ethics guide, when people have complaints against them, this is a good resource for people who want to know what the board is, how it operates, and what the impact is, not just for citizens, but for employees and elected officials also. So it's developed with that in mind. Ms. Leverson Green, I gave her some directives on the main thing I told her to do or ask her to do was just be concise and take out stuff that maybe didn't apply the first time I did this. And so she did just that, and she designed it, and it, not much more to say. Okay, just send it to Tasker, and that's the main thing. If you have anything that you want to change, let us know. It's a living document, so we can update it whenever we need to.
John was downgraded from a 1 page to this little square right there. Not even a phone number to this guy.
God, I'm humbled.
Yeah. You can make the picture smaller.
He still has his 1 page.
And image unavailable.
Yeah.
He still has his full page. He's living a nice, beautiful old life.
It's good. Good information. Looks good.
Any questions about it? Next, we will review the ethics officer evaluation. Annually, the board conducts a performance review of the ethics officer. Each of us submitted an evaluation, and the staff has compiled them into one report based on the ratings and comments. As you can see, we all seem to agree on Mr. Floyd's performance, and as it reflects on him, the performance of his assistant, Ms. Leverson Green, as well as the performance of the board attorney, Mr. Reed.
Yeah. And I want to say thank you for mentioning the staff and not just me, because however I perform is impacted by how they perform. And I'm in a good position because I'm working with really good people and talented people who also have a good sense of humor. So we can enjoy what we do all day long, but we're really serious about what we do. And I hope that comes through in the work. I share with you Ms. Levinson Green's evaluation because, like I said, it's reflective of the overall picture. And I hope that what you saw was her dedication and commitment. Because when I'll tell her, you can feel, but if she sees me working late at night, she will email me and ask me how she can help. So she's right there, working hard. So all of that's appreciated. And thank you for the evaluation. We had to take her evaluation, my evaluation, upload it into the system and all this good stuff to tie into the cost of living increase. We also did a resolution, and I probably should get you a copy of it. So for those of you who haven't seen it, but a few years ago, we did a resolution that basically said the board is saying whenever there is cost of living increase, include the staff because they were asking for the minutes and all this stuff from when you approved it. And for me, it's like me asking for a raise, which is embarrassing. So I really appreciated the resolution, but you can always rescind it, change it if you want to. So I'll make sure you see it, but that's the process.
Do we need to do the addendum or public comment? Okay.
It's all right.
I had my notes, sorry.
We have one addendum, Chair, and you don't have to vote on it because we can't vote, but we can go over it. We received a request for an advisory opinion, and John was diligently worked on it, so we were able to respond today and get it to you today.
So we'll have to approve this at the next meeting. We received notice late yesterday afternoon, so morning. One issue I'd like to change, and I'll go before I get back, being question number one, I'll just change that to question since we only dealt with one question here. But there were a number of nonprofit and for-profit organizations that wanted to hold a Feed the Frontline event or series of events where they would go to firehouses, police stations, et cetera, in Tallahassee, Leon County, neighboring counties. They provide food to all the first responders. They would then post for photographs, and I think do some type of media event, it sounded like. So the fire department wanted to know whether that would run afoul of the ethics code. So we went through, we did an analysis. There were four organizations involved. A 501c4 nonprofit called the America Project, a subsidiary of that organization called Vote Your Vision, private brewery named Armed Forces Brewing Company based out of Virginia, and then the company that would be providing the food and beverages would be Big Country's Barbecue and Deli out of Thea. So we went through each of the organizations. None of them were a prohibited source. None of them were city vendors. None of them lease city property, and none of them hire lobbyists. So ultimately, our recommendation was that based on the ethics code, there was no reason not to go forward. My understanding is they're not going forward, but we nevertheless provided them opinion on the request.
Just point out that the sponsors of this were providing barbecue to all of the first responders in the area, in the county and the city. So on the whole, they all decided, we received an email after we sent this, that they decided not to go forward. Yeah, we stayed, we had other concerns, but they were not within our jurisdiction, so we stayed with those concerns, but we made an attempt to make sure the city understood, received, and were aware of this leadership. But it appears they did their due diligence.
We'll bring it back next month.
Without the number one.
Without the number one. Yep.
Any public comment on non-agenda items?
No.
I think our only directives are to revisit all the things we will need to vote on next month. Thank you for reviewing them. Thank you for your work on all of them, getting them prepared for today. I appreciate that. Any other concerns, questions?
I move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Kelly, move.
Vote on it.
Gotta vote on it.
Oh, yeah.
We're stuck here
You have
forever.
to leave. Okay.